There is a box of death. The person who opens it will die. Three people have different ideas about the box.
You know, I can't just sit here anymore. I have to open this box of death. For me, death feels like a kind of release. I'm just so tired of this endless struggle.
No, Alex, what are you doing? You can't open it just like that. It feels dangerous.
Wait. Let's think this through. What really is death? Death is the permanent cessation of consciousness. People do not experience death, they only experience their finite life. Death demands our attention. But do we really know if confronting it brings us more suffering than happiness?
Whatever. I've endured enough. Life has just become more unbearable. Every day feels like I'm dragging myself through the same pain. If there's even a chance this could end the suffering, I need to try it.
No, Alex, I can't even think about this. Things can always be better. Why do you even want to consider death? I love every moment. I don't want to lose the joy, the laughter, the friendships, the memories. It's everything to me.
Wow, it's intriguing though. What if this is a moment to evaluate our lives and how our current life impacts our ideas about the future? If life feels negative, a constant drift, or suffering, then maybe death has a positive value. But for those who already live a good life, death has a negative value at the end of the as it symbolizes the end of current happiness. If its suffering outweighs our meaningful engagement, then maybe death is demanded. There's a different net value of death, isn't there? We need to recognize that this value of death is subjective. So it's hard to say that death is always good or bad. For me, it's just a neutral thing that will happen someday. Well, there could exist real life circumstances where death is good for some people, as they could just have a greater negative value judgment than their positive values in assessing their future life. The judgment of something good or bad is inherently subjective, as these values are grounded in individual perceptions and cannot be assessed without the considerations of individual perspectives. When something contradicts an individual's perceived benefits, it is deemed bad. However, these benefits are also subjective and vary from person to person. Given that death can hold different meanings and values for different individuals, it's not universally negative. By just acknowledging the diversity of perspectives, it doesn't lead to the conclusion that death is not always bad. Instead, whether death has a positive or negative net value depends on one's personal beliefs and circumstances.
Is it possible that death isn't actually bad if you look at its instrumental value? Maybe that is just the way to end a situation that's no longer livable. I mean, think about a cancer patient though. Someone in a constant physical pain and emotional distress. If the treatment only brings worse side effects, for example, like chronic pain, feeling like a burden, losing independence, then honestly, that can start to look like a kind of release from a life that's become nothing but suffering. And there's also another way to see it. That can make all the inequalities in life feel a bit less evil. So Heineken even talk about this idea of quote unquote being toward death. So that knowing we're going to die one day is like a horizon that equalizes all human projects. So while we're alive, things like wealth, talent, skills, they matter a lot. But when you're standing in front of death, all of this start to lose its power. So take someone like Steve Jobs. He had insane level of success, money, influence, but when he got a terminal cancer, he had to face that exact same basic reality as anyone else. So no amount of money could buy him more time or cancel the death. So yeah, achievements separate us in life, but they don't change our end. So we're still heading toward the same place. So now imagine a world without death, a true immortality. So the wealthy and powerful could just keep stacking more resources, more influence, more knowledge forever and ever. So without death, that gap between people would just grow and grow and grow with no limit in the future. So in that sense, that makes our lives fair in an existential way. Not fair in a sense that who gets what, but fair because in the end, we all share the same final destination. And there's even more. That gives our life a sense of urgency. So because we know our time is limited, we are pushed to ask ourselves, what actually matters to me. So you hear story of people who gets a terminal diagnosis and suddenly decide to travel to their dream place or finally spend real intentional time with their family. So that awareness of ticking clock forces them to prioritize what feels most important. So now, if immortality were real, it's easy to imagine people are just gonna say like, I'll do it later for hundreds, thousands of years. So without an end, things can start to feel empty. No deadlines, no last chance, no reason to act now instead of someday. The drive to chase goals or passion could just fade away when there's always more time. So, in a strange way, that is also what gives our choices weight and meaning. So, when I put all of this together, I just don't think we can say death is always bad. So, there's no view from outside every mind that can judge death as universally negative. For some people, in some circumstances, death might feel like a mercy, a release from constant suffering, or a way of stopping an endlessly unfair future. For others, it's a heartbreaking loss because it cuts off a life that is still full of joy and meaning. In the end, whether that is good or bad, it depends on the person, their beliefs, and their situations, and the life that they are actually living.
Since people never actually experience death, the only certain thing about death is that it feels different from the state of living. What is living to humans after all? At the core of human existence are our perceptions and emotions. Our experiences, whether joyful or painful, compel us to navigate the world in a subjective manner, giving life its meaning and richness. Each person's interpretation of life is influenced by individual experiences, beliefs, and emotions, creating uniqueness. Death, as the end of life, is also influenced by the subjective interpretation. It seems like if death is always bad, then immortality with ideal conditions like no aging, no defects, and no degeneration of rationality should be good. However, there is inherently ridiculousness in immortality, because some of our traits cannot afford that. Immortality gradually deprives us from the novelty and stimulation of things that we experienced, then make us bored and empty. According to the psychological phenomenon hedonic adaptation, people quickly return to a baseline level of happiness after experiencing changes in their circumstances, suggesting that prolonged positive experiences may lose their value over time. Therefore, it is impossible that immortality always provide people an ideal condition to live. No one wants immortality if it doesn't provide people with ideal conditions. Think about the situation where a person never dies, but at the same time the person enjoys only little happiness or has health issues. That's the reason why death can be good.